friends, my name is Javed Akhtar and today we are going to learn Big Data with Hadoop Framework. So let's start. Let us understand how the big data has been generated till now. From beginning of time to till 2003, 5 billion GB, that is gigabytes of data has been generated. Okay, that's time is so long. Again, in 2011, 5 billion of GB data was generated per 2 days. So see how the difference has came. Now again in 2013, 5 billion GB data has been generated in per 10 minutes. You can see now how short time period this much amount of data has been generated. So we can say that 90% of the data has been generated in last few years. Okay, but the question is how this much amount of data are coming in existence. So source of data are social media like Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, Instagram and lots of sites. Again, e-commerce, Flipkart, Amazon, Myntra, these sites are coming in this e-commerce category, etc. Again, sensors, lots of sensors we use for capturing the data. They also stores lots of data. Airlines, they creating a huge data there. That's also a very big data. So more can be also taken here. That is lots of things. But up to these are the sources. And the YouTube is also generating lots of data. Huge data because it's video again, so it's of course a very big data. So these are the source of data. Okay, let us stand for the definition of big data. What we call the big data. We got that how big data has been coming. This must see from the word we can understand what is big data. But let's define it so that things will be clear. Okay, definition of big data. A collection of large data sets that cannot be processed using traditional computing techniques like RDBMS. So RDBMS is unable to deal with trillions of data to process it and give the output in local machine. So big data is collection of large data sets, which the word big data is giving the context, that cannot be processed using traditional computing techniques like RDBMS. That's the definition we got, as a huge data which cannot be processed by traditional techniques to process in a required time period, within required limited time period, and proper result, of course, within the time periods. That's data we require. So RDBMS like techniques are not able to process that trillions of data and give the output in within time period. Okay, now that's the definition. But again, for a single machine, our single machine. Okay, it has processor, not processor, it has a hard disk of 1 GB. Okay, so 1 GB data can be stored here and locally can be processed here. Fine, but what if 2 GB of data you are getting? So can you store this 2 GB of data in this machine and process it? No. So this 2 GB data is also big data for this machine with 1 GB hard disk. So big data does not always mean the huge trillions of data, but it depends on whether you are able to process it on your machine or not. So that's the concept again for the big data. For this computer, this 2 GB data is big data. Okay, so it does not necessarily mean that it has to be trillions GB of data to be called a big data. So it depends the context in which you are saying. So in this context, this computer is having limited hard disk, that 1 GB, which can be stored and can be processed in this machine. So this 2 GB data is big data for this machine. Okay. So huge data has been generated, that is big data has been generated. But after generation of this much amount of big data, what the problem we are facing with this big data? So why we are reading this big data? There has to be something. There is has to be something. Means there is actually, the thing is, there is a problem with big data. And what are the problems we are facing with this amount of big data which we are nowadays collecting? Okay, so we need to understand what the big data problem we are facing. Okay, so what are the problems we are facing with this big data? Let us understand this first. Storing the big data. Storing the big data. Suppose we have one TB of hard disk in our machine, and we are generating lots of data every day, and so we have don't that much space to store. So it does not mean that every time we are generating lots of data and we will buy hard disk and we will store it. So everybody does not have that much amount of money. So what they are going to pay for that? So storing of that much amount of big data, suppose for local people how much data is 1 GB 2 GB, but for the big companies it is huge data. So they need to buy lots of hard disks, and so storing of that data is very difficult. Now analysis of big data, like searching in big data. You have data, but without any purpose, what you will do? So a data needs to be analyzed to get some output so that it can be utilized somewhere. So analyzing the huge amount of data, that data is really a very difficult task, because the earlier 1 GB or 2 GB, that's fine, but the 5 billion trillions of GB of data is very huge amount of data, and to process that much amount of data is really very difficult task. Okay, now transferring data, again the same problem. I have that 5 TB of data, I want to transfer it somewhere, so it is again a very difficult task. Now fourth one is very interesting. You have a machine, you have, suppose your data is what you did, you stored the data somewhere. Suppose there is a data warehouse who is just like a contract. You have given some money for some days, and you have just stored that much amount data for that much days. So you are paying for that and not paying for the that much amount of hard disk. You would have to you would had to borrow earlier without that data warehouse. So here you are utilizing the data warehouse facility to store your huge data, and you are taking that huge data whenever you are required. So there is a data warehouse here, and here your local your machine where you work. So this is data warehouse, and this is your PC. Fine. Now you want to, there is a lots of data you are storing. Now you want to, that much amount of data you want to process it. Okay, what we know, that to process the data must be existing in local machine. Okay, so data is somewhere else and your machine is here. So what you need to do, you need to take that much amount of data to your local machine, and then you need to process. So again it is very difficult, that much amount data to taking here again local machine, then analyze it and then get output. Again whenever you are required, you will need to transfer that much. So it's a very difficult task. Fine. So these are the problems we are facing with big data. Now what is data? Data which can be stored is your information. What is data? Information which can be stored is your data. So stored information is data. Now huge amount of data we are generating, that huge amount of data are categorized in three forms, like unstructured data, structured data, and semi-structured data. Let us understand each one by one. Unstructured data. Unstructured data are information that either does not have a predefined data model or is not organized in a predefined manner. So text file. Text file is not predefinedly manner. It's just a data which is later not organized. There is no meaning from that we are getting. We will from that whenever we are storing the text file, that it does not give me the meaning that what the data is. Okay. Now dates is also same, just written at 22/7/2000 something. So that date is not giving us any information about, because we had not stored that date with some key value. Now numbers is just random numbers we put it. We don't know about that what the number is about. So we need to classify those numbers also. So it is, if it is not classified, then it is also unstructured data. So predefined model that does not have a predefined data model like text file, dates and numbers, then we said this data are unstructured data. Okay, so let us understand structured data. What is structured data? Information with a high degree of organization such that inclusion in is a relational database. In a relational database, inclusion in relational database is easily searchable by simple straightforward search engine algorithm or other search operation. So structured data are what? Data we store which are related to each other. Okay, so suppose a student table, student data we are storing. So what we store? Name of the student, age of the student, weight of the student, class of the student, your marks of the student. This sort of data we are storing for the information. So all these data are related to the particular student. So these data are related to each other, and each one data like height, it is classified that height is 20, suppose 5 feet. So that 5 feet is classified as a height for the corresponding student. So it is related to each other. So that data we say that is structured data. Okay, so relational data is what? Data which is related to each other. Like student age is related to that name. Student height is related to that name. Okay, so these data are related to the particular student. So we say that this is related relational data, and we store relational data in RDBMS, relational database management system. So this structured data means data which is related to each other and which is having very high degree of organization. High degree of organization means the data we are storing will be of having some tag with that, so that we can identify what the data is about has been stored there. So we can get the information. It is not like text there stored and we don't have any idea what the text is resembling and giving us as info. So without any tag, that text does not have any meaning, so that will be unstructured. But if the text or any simple word like name of the student, suppose it's Sunil is the name of a student that has been stored there. Now that Sunil is like nothing but a text, but that text has been categorized as name of the student. So it has a tag with the tag that it is a name. So we are from that text, that is Sunil, Sunil, we are having some information that Sunil is the text which is nothing but a name. So it is having a or the high degree of organization such that inclusion in reduced database easily searchable. So when we want to search the data, the name of the student we will search. So we are having name and Sunil. So with these two things, with a tag, we can search easily by some algorithm and any operation. So it's nothing but a structured data. Now, semi-structured data, it is a form of structured data that does not conform with the form structure of data models associated with relational database. This is a typical one. It's a structured data, that's fine. Now, it is saying that the structured data that does not conform with formal structure of data models associated with the relational database. In relational database, we are having some tags, but like in XML file we don't find like that things. So there is a structured data, fine, but that does not resemble sort of very structured data models associated with that relational database. So it's XML example of semi-structured data is your XML file, your log file, your XML semi-structured data example. Now why we have studied these three types of data? We have understood these three types of data, but in traditional system like RDBMS, we were only able to deal with the structured data we were generating. We were storing the structured data, we were processing that structured data and getting output. But nowadays only structured data has not been generated. We are having all three types of data in our life. So unstructured data we are having structured data and semi-structured data. These three of data we need to process, but RDBMS is only possible to structure. So what we need to some another technique. From that technique we need to understand, we need to find out our requirements. Okay, so we need something. So traditional database is not having to help, going to help us. It is going to help us with only structured data. So we find it another technique, which is Bigdata with Hadoop framework, which will provide us the all type solution for all type of data, like processing, searching, anything. So earlier we have just learned earlier that what are the problems we are facing with databases, problems with big data, that were also a problem. Now unstructured and semi-structured data is also a problem, which on the earlier problems and these two problems also has been solved by this. Okay, so this Hadoop big data with Hadoop framework we are dealing with are going to solve these all problems. That's why we have studied these things. Okay, now storing data, that is huge data, is very big problem. So what is done is that those data has been stored in a very in data warehouse, data centers or data warehouse. And what is that data center and data warehouse? They are nothing but 500 to 600 acres of lands, which are basically nothing but containing huge number of hard disks, maybe 500 TB or 1000 TB of each one, maybe some other else, any number you can. This must, you can assume that you can just get the idea about that 500-600 acres of lands, and which is only used for storing the data. So how much data is going to it stored? There is huge billions, millions of data, terabyte or petabytes of data is going to be stored. So lots of hard disk has been taken here. And who is the owner of this land? So it requires a huge money to keep those data. So these are provides those data warehouse. Why? How? So Amazon Web Services are having some its own things. So it gives the warehouse. Now Microsoft Azure, Microsoft also having lots of data to be stored, but lots of data, they are not lots of space they are having empty. Suppose this much of data, this much of hard disk they have used, but what about the rest one? They are not going to utilize that. So what they do, they provide services to different companies, so that who is unable to have that big data warehouse. So what these companies provide, they provide services to store those amount of data, so that their space machines, that is hard disk, remaining idle, can be utilized for storing those data. Okay, this amount of data has been stored. Now it is a cold, generally it is an kept this data warehouse in a cold place. Why? Because in very less temperature, in if temperature increases, this the hard disk starts not working properly. The data may be lost. So we keep those data warehouse in very cold place. Now nowadays what is happening is this data is to be stored in data warehouse, but this data warehouse is also nowadays having machines to process that data depending on some queries. So this data warehouse is having with also some cluster of machines to process those data as per requirement. Now let us understand the three V's of big data. What is three V's of data resembles? Three V's of data is volume of, that is nowadays huge amount of data has been generated. So big data is dealing with volume, lots of data. So big data is related to the volume, that is huge data has been generated, that is big data. So it's a volume related to big data, that's why one V. Now another V is velocity. That's the second V of the big data. What is second V of data? That's velocity. Velocity is nothing but the velocity with which data are being produced. So this much amount of data has been produced in this short period of time, where like just in 10 minutes 5 billion of GBs of data has been generated. So that is very huge data, that is velocity is very high. production of the values, those much amount of data is very high. So that's resembles, that gives the big data. So velocity is, your data generation velocity is very high, which gives big data. Now third one, volume, velocity and variety of data. So again, big data is not only the structured data, it is having unstructured, semi-structured data and structured data. So combination of these things, so video file, text file, XML file, log file, pictures, relational data. Okay, these all are combination of different variety of the data, like structured, unstructured and semi-structured. So the different variety of data we are generating, which is very huge, and huge amount of data, huge variety and of data is being generated as much as big. So it is nothing but again related to the big data. So huge variety of data is generating in bulk amount is big data. Let us understand what is Hadoop. Hadoop is a framework. Hadoop is a technique. Hadoop is a open source platform which is used for storing big data and processing those big data on distributed servers, distributed and commoditized servers. So what is the meaning of that? Distributed servers. Distributed means each and every particular programs will be running on different nodes, so that works can be synchronized and easily in short period of time can be done. So that's in distributed system. Now another is commoditized. What is the meaning of commoditized servers? Commoditized. Okay, let me write it. Distributed servers and commoditized servers. So open source platform. So Hadoop is an open source platform used for storing big data to process them on distributed and commoditized server, that is to process them on different nodes for the different programs for short period of time, obtaining the output in short period of time, and accommodate at a cheap level of in providing those services in cheap, that is in cheap, yeah, and but reliable, cheap but reliable, that is your commoditized server. So that is your Hadoop. Okay, so before understanding the Hadoop concept, how the whole architecture of the Hadoop has been established, let us understand first the history of this Hadoop, how it came into place in history. Now Apache Software Foundation has made this Hadoop system open source platform. Okay, and in 2012 the 1.0 version of the Hadoop has the Apache 1.0 version of the Hadoop has came. Now it is a very interesting story that how the Hadoop symbol as elephant came into play. Now the dog cutting was the man who was just seeing his child playing with his playing is with elephant toy. By just recognition of that elephant has been taken as the symbol for the Hadoop. So it is not that Hadoop has taken the name because due to the big data, so elephant is a very big, so it will be big. It is not that case, but actually it was the child of dog cutting who has seen his child and just symbolize it. It's just a fact. Okay, so now we will understand the actual architecture of Hadoop, how its architecture has been established.